Clear thinking is not automatic. Richard Feynman treated it as a skill that must be practiced. Most of the time, you use the same mental path again and again. You see a fact and your mind explains it in the usual way. That way feels normal. So you trust it. Feynman warned that this habit can block real understanding. He said you must not fool yourself. And that includes being fooled by your own method of thinking. You begin to notice that understanding can be a feeling rather than a result. Your mind can produce a quick sense of clarity without real checks. The first step is to question how you are trying to understand in the first place. Your default way of understanding must be examined before it is trusted that your brain builds explanations. Quickly, it wants simple causes. It sees something and tries to explain it right away. It uses past experience to fill gaps. This is efficient, but it is not always accurate. A fast explanation can feel complete even when important facts are missing. You see this in daily life. You hear a short claim and your mind supplies a reason. You see a result and assume the cause. You notice a pattern and turn it into a rule. These steps happen in seconds, so they feel natural. Psychology calls many of these habits cognitive biases. The point is not to memorize the term. The point is to notice that the mind prefers speed, and speed can create mistakes. A shortcut can lead to a clean answer that is still wrong. Feynman did not treat the first story the mind offers as truth. He treated it as a guess that must face checks. Quick explanations must be tested before they are accepted. Understanding can feel real even when it is thin. Many people confuse knowing words with knowing how something works. You may recognize a topic, repeat a summary, and feel familiar with the idea. That familiarity can create a false sense of depth that you notice the gap when you try to explain the idea step by step. You try to define each part and show how one step leads to the next. Then you reach a point where you cannot continue. You use vague language. You skip steps. You rely on "it just is." This is not a failure. It is a signal. People often believe they understand until they must explain. When they explain, the gaps appear. Those gaps reveal the real limit of understanding. Feynman tested himself by explaining ideas in simple language. If the explanation failed, he went back to the basics and rebuilt the idea with clear steps. Real understanding survives simple explanation. Words are not the same as meaning. People often hide behind terms. They learn a label and think they have learned the idea. But a label can be repeated without real understanding. The mind can store language while the logic remains unclear. You see this when you try to define the words you use. You may say bias, energy, market, or logic with confidence. But when you try to explain them in plain language, weak spots appear. This is how language reveals what you truly know. A simple method helps. Take a topic and explain it as if teaching a beginner. Avoid jargon. Use short sentences. Define each term. When you cannot explain a part, mark it as a gap and study it. If you can say it simply, you likely understand it. If you cannot, you are relying on words instead of meaning. Clear language exposes shallow knowledge. Your understanding depends on assumptions. Many errors come from hidden steps in reasoning. The mind shows you the conclusion, but hides the chain that led to it. That makes the result feel certain. To find hidden assumptions, work backward. Take your conclusion and ask what must be true for it to hold. List the steps. Separate what you observe from what you guessed. Notice where you relied on common sense instead of facts. Careful reasoning requires that you show the steps before accepting the result. Then you test the weak steps. If one step fails, the conclusion changes. Breaking problems into smaller parts makes them easier to check. If you cannot test a step, you cannot treat it as solid. Hidden assumptions must be made visible before reasoning is trusted. A simple pause can reset your thinking. The first interpretation often comes from habit and fast thinking. It feels correct because it appears smoothly. But smooth does not mean true. There are two general kinds of thinking. One is fast. It reacts, labels, and closes the case. The other is slow. It checks, compares, and looks for missing facts. When clarity matters, you slow down. You ask what you might be assuming. You ask what evidence could confirm the idea and what evidence could break it. You can practice this in one step. When an interpretation feels too easy, pause. Restate it in plain words. Look for other explanations. Allow time for checking. Slower thinking improves understanding. Evidence is the clean test for understanding. You do not keep an idea because you like it. You keep it because it matches facts. If evidence contradicts the idea must change. That is not a loss. It is progress. You apply this rule to your own explanations. Ask what facts support the claim. Ask what facts would weaken it. Avoid building explanations that cannot be checked. Avoid defending an idea just because it feels familiar. Start with observation. Form a claim that fits what you observed. Define what the claim predicts. Test the prediction. Update the claim based on results. Even outside a lab, you can look for data, repeat results, and clear evidence that an idea holds under pressure. Evidence decides whether an explanation stands. Your first interpretation deserves suspicion. The mind protects its own views. It prefers evidence that supports them and ignores evidence that threatens them. That is why self-criticism is necessary. Treat your interpretation like a claim made by someone else. Do not give it special trust because it is yours. Ask what it depends on. Ask what could prove it wrong. Search for weak points. Try to disprove your own idea. Look for counterexamples. Look for cases where its prediction fails. If you find failure, revise the idea. If it survives serious testing, your confidence becomes more grounded. Questioning your own interpretation reduces bias and increases accuracy. Strong reasoning begins by challenging yourself. Not knowing is part of real understanding. Certainty can come from pressure, habit, or comfort. Honest thinking allows uncertainty when evidence is missing. You notice how quickly the mind wants closure. It dislikes open questions, so it fills gaps with guesses. The problem is not guessing. The problem is forgetting that you are guessing. That turns uncertainty into false certainty. A cleaner approach is to match your confidence to your evidence. Strong evidence earns strong confidence. Weak evidence earns weak confidence. No evidence earns, I don't know yet. This keeps you flexible and open to learning. Accepting uncertainty protects accuracy. Simple questions can rebuild understanding. Deep clarity often begins with basic questions. They may look too simple, but they cut through confusion. Ask what you actually know. List facts you can support. Define terms in plain language. Ask how one step leads to the next. Ask what evidence would confirm the idea and what evidence would break it. These questions make your reasoning visible. Define the problem. Ask a clear question. Build a claim that can be checked. Test it. Update it. When things become unclear, return to basic principles and rebuild from the ground up. Simple questions rebuild clear understanding. You can train yourself to override automatic thinking. The mind loves easy explanations, familiar patterns, and quick closure. Mental override means noticing these habits and interrupting them. Build a simple routine. When an explanation feels too easy, pause. Restate it in plain words. Identify assumptions. Separate story from fact. Check for evidence. Test one part of the claim if you can. Admit what you do not know yet. Watch how you think, not just what you think. Notice the process behind your conclusions. When you practice this, you catch errors earlier and learn faster. You do not need perfect thinking. You need honest checking. With practice, this override becomes natural. Clear thinkers actively examine how they understand things.